everyone. My name is Yauheni, and today my talk would be cooking up a UI framework. That's fortunate because everyone is already from the lunch, so no one is hungry. But hope you enjoyed. First thing, who I am. Why should you trust me? So I've spent some time in development and participated in about 30 front-end projects. I'm currently also holding a role of CTO at Epic Max, and we are guys who are obsessed with small things about Vue.js development and front-end development in general. I'm also a creator and lead developer of VueStack UI and VueStack admin, which is respectively UI framework and admin template. And I will be talking about UI frameworks today. So I want to talk about three things. I want to guide you in maybe not using your own framework and using existing one, or creating a wrapper, or creating your own UI framework. And I want you to have a good understanding after this talk on which one you should select for yourself. I'll start with my story, how we started developing frameworks and stuff like that. We created in 2017 an admin dashboard, and it was pretty popular. And we thought, OK, let's move further. And the admin panel itself was tricky to support because components were embedded in it. So we had to move away components so that users can update them without making it manually, without getting new version of admin template. And we did it in 2021. We are constantly improving framework still. And we added documentation on Nux 2. This is very luxurious, don't do it. These are options. Then we tried to move to Nux 3. It wasn't very stable at the point. It was a mistake. We moved back to Nux 2. Then in 2023, latest part, we finally settled on Nux 3 with already stable version. We also switched to Vue 3 and composition API so that components are easier to support and long-term stable. We also added Storybook for smoother development. And right now, our testing, QA, and development, it's happening in Storybook primarily. And we're still working on it. It was a team effort. I'm not the only one responsible for the whole framework, but I participated in a lot of areas, so I pretty much aware of what's going on with it. And now let's start cooking your own solution. So what would you do for your own framework? We will focus on a couple of points. First, we will decide which kind of framework you want to use to create, so like wrapper or your own or nothing at all. Then we would talk about libraries. Then we would talk about styling framework. Then we would talk a bit about testing, and finally, documentation. So first, I have a couple of questions for you. And if you answer on any of these yes, then you might need to create a UI framework. So first question is, do you want to extract components and use them for multiple projects? So what I mean here is sometimes you might have a number of projects, and styling there is the same, and you want to move it to a separate project and extract. So does anybody from you had a case like that? Can you raise your hand? OK, cool. Or maybe you have an idea to open source a part of your code base, again, extracting UI framework, and then making it public. Anyone? OK, that's pretty cool. Maybe you want multiple teams to work on the same project without overlaps. Here, again, extracting and then moving it to some different team without interaction. Anyone? Please raise your hand. OK. No much hands. That's a rare case. Thank you. And maybe you also need to speed up development for new projects. So in this case, we extract a framework, and then we want to create a boilerplate where you can create maybe 20 projects or so, a lot of projects quickly. Does anybody have a case like that? OK, very good, very good. I'm very excited about this. If you didn't answer any of these questions, so maybe you don't need to create your own framework. You need to use existing one. And now let's talk about creating in some shape or form your own framework. First, I want to focus on creating a wrapper on the existing framework. And there are cons here. Basically, any breaking change is hurt. This is less of an issue right now, as we switched mostly for all frameworks to Vue 3. Vue 2 to Vue 3 was a very painful experience. But still, like, you can have some unwanted change, and you would have to support it. And you also inherit a bunch of features from the frameworks. There are ways to sidestep these. You can create like a good interfaces, tight interfaces for the components, and maybe use only like a couple of props, like maybe 5 or 10, or whatever you need in your application. Yeah. And there are all obviously pros in this solution. First is like low commitment. So the wrapper itself could take months and could be feature complete in that time. It actually could be very flexible if you use unstyled components. And right now, a lot of frameworks, so like PrimeView, they allow you to switch CSS implementation, which allows you to be very flexible. And so this would allow you probably to cover most of your needs, because the way frameworks are developed is that they consider community input, and the most like common features are already there. So if you have something niche, you would have implemented, but other things would be there. Let's focus on how do you choose a UI framework. There are a bunch of them on the market, and which one is good for you. So my idea here is you obviously know about stars or like checking a repository, checking it's supported. So I won't delve into that. I will cover a couple of points that are interesting. First is like being compatible with your design goals. So what I want to do is I want to look at current look and feel of application and check which framework fits you best. So which one you would do less work to make it close to your implementation. And you also need to check your components needs. So in this case, I would like to have like a list of components, a list of features, and just compare this one by one and see there is no surprises there. And this is especially important for complicated components like data table and autocomplete. When you adapt existing UI frameworks, you want to maybe extract it into your UI library into a different repository and try to use as much of this framework configuration as you can. Generally, that would include something like colors, breakpoints, default props. It's a modern thing right now, so you can like globally define props. I think almost every framework supports it. Icons and the internalization. Then you also want to include their CSS customization and try to use the most like high-level features there, like CSS variables. And then you can, if it doesn't work, you can do direct overrides. Then you also want to create some development and testing environment, because like just creating config is not enough. You want to make sure your implementation is somewhat stable. I would recommend a storybook setup with only customizations. So anything you add in your wrapper, you need to test. But anything that is like component functionality, you extend it, I would not recommend to test. So it's tested already on their side. And you can also use visual tests. These are great because you can prevent regressions, even on small things, like you can have some different paddings or stuff like that, and you can still catch it. And that's it about creating a wrapper. And now I want to talk about creating your own UI framework. And there are significant cons here. First, it's high commitment. It's very high commitment. You might think like it's good enough. No, it's very high. And it takes high expertise in developers. So I would recommend someone who's like maybe doing already years of UI framework development, because the set of skill is very different from what you need in applications, actually. Might be surprising. And the breaking changes still hurt, but it's like self-inflicted pain. Hurts a bit less, maybe. And there are some pros, obviously. It's as flexible as you want it to be. So if you have very specific needs for your design goals, that may be a way to go for you. And a set of features would be tight, exactly tight again as you want to use it. You can use for gathering requirements, like about which components do you use, which props do you use. You can use existing frameworks as a reference. They did already a great job at collecting this information. I would also recommend maybe sticking to one framework for naming conventions, because we don't have any kind of standard in the UI frameworks community. Anyone does naming differently, so please stick to one single pattern if possible. For library usage, I think the only one I can mention is VueUse. So for any kind of utility JavaScript that you would use in framework, I would recommend using VueUse, just because it's like a standard approach for it. When it comes to CSS, I think right now a good thing is to use variables and expose them, CSS variables. This allows for user to add some customization without SCSS. Initially, a lot of frameworks pushed this SCSS agenda to customer. And right now, that's less of an issue. So you would have CSS variables, and that's basically it. You don't need to spin SCSS on your client project. I would also recommend using CSS variables sparingly for spots where you would like to change them, and not use them for cases where, like, let's say, changing variable would break your component. When it comes to utility classes, I would recommend to use utility-first CSS frameworks. Again, before UI frameworks, they were like, OK, here's a full package for you. Here's like CSS utilities. Here's the components. Here's everything. And right now, I think bundling utility classes is just not worth it at all, because I would have to tell my clients that please delete my utility CSS classes and use Tailwind, because it's better, and why not bundle it together initially. And it has a lot of benefits for users, because they don't need to learn new syntax. They have out-of-the-box CSS purging, so bundles would be very small. It's also very stable, like classes don't change at all for a long time already. Very easy to debug, and you can extend framework. You can even use it for your own components. It still would work fine. Okay. Now I want to talk a bit about testing. And I believe the best approach for testing of UI components is a combination of storybook, interaction tests, and visual tests. The first thing is like it's very low effort. So compared to any kind of testing, it's like, I think, the laziest one. So I like it a lot. It's also very high value. And by high value, I mean that you can have unit tests. You can have even like good mocking system, but nothing covers UI component functionality as good as small E2E test, which is interaction test, and just clicking through story. So it allows you to answer the question, does that feature works? And unit tests sometimes do not answer this question. They provide some kind of general coverage. So something works, but you're not sure what works. Storybook also allows to test composables. And the way I like to do it is to create a wrapper on top of composable. So like the component I would create would be a mock, instead of you having a need to create like externally some mocking ecosystem. Unit tests I would recommend using sparingly for non-UI logic, because it's way higher effort, and it's quick to run, but not sure if that's usable. Yep. And I wanted to tell a bit about Storybook, how it works, and small details. Generally in Storybook you would have, actually maybe you can raise a hand if you used Storybook before. So that, okay, that's a lot of hands, wow. I won't explain too much then. So in Storybook you have stories where you have like component template and some data, and it would have like a navigation system where you would be able to go through all these demos. And it also allows you to have interaction tests. And interaction tests, these are like small E2E tests where you would like click on some buttons or something and expect results. And this could be automated, and you can also go through them manually. So it's like both a development and automated testing team tool. Sorry. Right. Storybook also gives you a tool for visual testing. So not Storybook, Chromatic, and this is an external tool. You can do it with some other solution, but I like Chromatic because it has it's tailored for Storybook. It has very good integration with it, and it also keeps your history, and it's also not very expensive. So maybe you can give it a try. Another thing I want to talk is compatibility testing. Your framework has to be used in some environment, and you cannot really be sure it works unless you test it in that environment. And that's very, very important, because we had a lot of bugs where, like let's say we are pretty sure it works on development environment because developers are developing there. We are pretty sure it works for Nuxt because documentation is in Nuxt. But any other environment we are not really touching regularly. So and it sometimes was broken. It was pain. So I would recommend also to create some kind of testing playground for yourself, where you test for all environments you support. And for our frameworks, it was like a kitchen sink page with all components, and we run it through a number of environments like Nuxt SPA, Nuxt SSR, Vite, Vite CGS for CDN injection, and Webpack. Webpack is still very popular, so I think you still have to support it if you are doing something public. Yeah. Now a couple of words about documentation. I think the first thing to do with documentation would be to just use Storybook. It has decent component API documentation. It has decent tooling for documentation pages. And you can also have some examples in place. After you feel Storybook is too tight for you, you can move to some static site generator like WithPress. And if that's still not enough, which was the case for us, you can switch to Nuxt, but it will be much more work. Though Nuxt provides great things like SSR, flexible pages structure, you can do whatever you want. And yeah. One more thing is translations. So idealistically, you want to have some languages added to the documentation. But in practice, we found that it's pretty hard for UI framework documentation to also support translations. They're just taking too much space. Because we had examples, and we had just documentation pages, and we had sometimes like translation examples, and it's just getting into this whole mess, and yeah, it just was very hard for us to support. So we decided to use just English. And right now, I think AI tools, they are getting to a point where it's very easy for like non-English speaking developer to just go and translate the whole page with high quality. So yeah, why bother? But that doesn't address components. It's only about documentation for framework itself. Right, and I think that's about it for my topic. And I have a couple of takeaways for you. I want you to first have a question like, do you truly need to create your own UI framework? Or maybe you have to do something else. If you do, easy way would be to extend the existing UI framework and then do some testing for it. Hard way would be to create your own UI framework, very hard way. And if you decide to go this way, you would use CSS variables and utility-first CSS frameworks. And I would also recommend to using Storybook and for testing and development, and unit tests for non-UI logic. And that's it with my talk, but I have one more thing, small advertisement. We'll be doing a Vue.js talk on October 16th. And it would be something like Vue-related, technology-related. So if you want to join, please do. It would be an online event for 1 hour. And that's it from my side. And I hope it was useful for you. I hope you can use it in your projects.